Hey, what's up? Welcome to Fathering Our Future. I'm Anthony Vandegrift, and I'm not the perfect dad, but every day, just like you, I am trying to be better. We are continuing our series on how to talk to our kids about sex and sexuality, how we as dads go about talking the talk. And my guest today needs no introduction. He's a renowned speaker, a best-selling author, and he also happens to be the host of my wife's favorite podcast. And I'm okay with that. I'm joined today by Dr. John Deloney, and if you're thinking to yourself, wow, I bet this is going to be a really good conversation, you're in for a treat. I want to break in real quick and let you know how much I appreciate you listening to the podcast. My prayer is that I can be a help and a blessing to you on your fatherhood journey. So if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and subscribe. And if at any point you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email at fatheringourfuture@gmail.com. And if you want other good content, you can go to the website, check out the blog, and other free resources. Thank you again for listening. Be blessed. Do you remember when you became a dad and all of a sudden those New Balances just hit differently? There's something about fatherhood that impacts your wardrobe, and I'm happy to share that I can help you with that now. Fathering Our Future now has merch. We have sweatshirts and hats and other pieces of clothing that you will enjoy sporting as a father. Just go to fatheringourfuture.com, select merch, or click the link in the description of this episode and get you something that you will enjoy and be proud to wear as a dad. Dad, I want you to know I care about you and I am on your side. So I have a free gift for you. I've put together a 7-day devotional, extracted from my devotional, Following Our Father, to help you realign your identity as a dad, to be the dad that God has called you to be and that your children need you to be. Simply click the link in the description below and get your free 7-day devotional. With Dr. John Deloney, it is an honor and a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thanks for your hospitality, man. I'm glad to be here. I don't get to talk to Texans enough, so it makes me feel good.
You're in good company today. I have been looking forward to this conversation where we talk about the talk. This is going to be actually me learning more about talking the talk because I'm viewing you as the expert. I have never even been a part of a talk. I didn't get the talk from my father, and I've yet to do it with my kids.
Oh, you mean the talk. The talk.
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
Welcome to the podcast.
The talk. I'm in.
Yeah. We're going to have fun. Before we get into the actual topic, though, I want to say a couple of things. Since I'm learning, and I'm learning from you, I know you're probably thinking, this isn't my podcast, and I don't want to overstep. You can step wherever you want. You can step on anything you want to step on. If I ask a question, you think, that's a good question. Here's a better one. Let me answer that one. Do it. That's totally fine.
Okay. Awesome.
And the second thing that I want to say before we get into this is thank you for writing this book. This book was fantastic.
Thank you.
I am not someone who deals with anxiety. At one point in the book, I actually got up and went to my wife, who is a diehard Delonite, or whatever you call your super fans. And I said, do people really feel this way? Do they really think about life in this way? She was like, yeah, they do. And I'm one of them. And I was like, okay. All right. It's like, great. But even as someone who doesn't deal with anxiety on big levels, there were still times I thought, I think he might be spying on me. It's a good book. And I love how you wrote it. You have 2 PhDs. You're obviously a smart individual. But it's not like I'm taking in information from someone on a stage. It's more like I'm sitting across the table from John Deloney and learning from you. So that was really cool. Also, your footnotes were fantastic. And I just want to throw that out there. They were the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we're talking about the talk today.
All right.
And the one thing that I want to bring out that's unique about the talk with you specifically, since I view you as an expert on the topic of anxiety, is what I'll just dub the talk anxiety. I think there's clearly anxiety with men and fathers when it comes to talking about sex and sexuality with their kids. In fact, in your book, you actually give a list of things that you have done. You've been in situations with sharks and alligators, active shooting scenarios. You've spoken to crowds of thousands, which is a huge fear for most people. And in that list, you said, I've also talked to both of my kids about sex. Like, this is clearly one of those things that freaks men out. So my question is, why is this something that freaks us out so much?
Man, that's a great question. I think it's multi-layered. I think going back to what you just said, if we got a singular the talk, 99.9%. I've never, in fact, heard somebody, I'm sure they exist, I've never heard somebody say, my dad nailed that one. So we either have, like, I remember, it's in my nervous system. My dad sat me down on a love seat together. Now, he's a big Texas cop at the time, sits me on a love seat. I remember it was like a pink flowery love seat, real poofy cushions. We're together on a love seat, same side of the booth in it, like staring at each other. And the way it started was, I heard about the Playboys. Number one, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Two, oh God, did you really? And three, like, I don't. And that's how it started. And the conversation was about 6 seconds before church. And it ended with, now, if you ever have any questions about girls, you come talk to me. Well, that was approximately 40 something years ago. And I've talked to my dad 0 times about right. So we either didn't get it, or our dads trying to do the best they knew how to do. Open up their toolkit, and there was like a hammer and like a hand saw, and that's the only tools they had. And so I think we have no roadmap. Number one. Number two, and this is, man, sitting down with therapists, especially who work with sexual behavior disorders and with sexually traumatized kids. There's just an ingrained meta message. It's in the air we breathe that men and kids and then sex, they don't mix. And so there can't ever be, here's a good example. My 9-year-old, I have a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old. So now we're in this moment where I'm making jokes with my 14-year-old that he gets. My wife rolls her eyes, but my wife's way of dealing with my jokes and my 14-year-old jokes is like, oh, do you want me to explain that to you in incredible graphic anatomical detail? That's the way she kind of pokes through. But my 9-year-old, we're in the kitchen. I made an inappropriate joke. My 14-year-old rolls his eyes. My wife laughed. And my daughter said, okay, what is sex again? And my wife said, Dad's going to explain it to you in great detail. And so, that was literally like the other day. And
That's awesome.
If you don't have that context, there's a fear of our daughters, especially. There's a fears of our son. There is maybe shame about our sexual past that we don't want to get into with our kids, or maybe we want to tell them you shouldn't do these things, but in our hearts we're like, oh, they're not that bad. Like, I think there's just so much mess about it, and we don't know how to navigate telling our kids, hey, I did this thing and I wish I hadn't have. Or I never even tried to hold hands with somebody till I was 32 years old, and I wish I'd gone on some dates, right? So we don't know how to have that conversation, and so we don't even start with this other one. And then, dude, we don't know how. I think modern men, especially, we're out of our depth, dude. The sexualized world my son has grown up in, like in my world, dude, it was like I knew where somebody had a Playboy in a trash sack hidden under some other guy's deck, like 4 streets over. Like I knew that.
Wow.
My son grows up in a radically, radically, radically different world where in 5th grade, he was the only one without a smartphone, the only kid in his class. Wow. And so every one of those kids in that class has every pornographic magazine, image, video ever created in their pocket. That's insanity, right? So I think a lot of dads my age, your age, we don't understand the world our kids are growing up in. And so we just don't want to get in there. So I think it's all of that all mixed up into one.
No, I think that's a really good response, especially not having the roadmap and then not actually fully realizing the world in which our kids are growing up in, because we always like to, I've been there, done that. I've got the T-shirt, like I can answer your questions, and that's not always the case, because if we don't grow as they grow, we get left behind. So let me do this. So you've painted this picture where it's a complicated mess. We don't necessarily have the roadmaps. There's clearly anxiety with dads having this conversation with their kids. In your book, you also talk about you have to choose your heart. You have to choose, since life is challenging, this way or this way. You either pursue the challenge or you decide to live with the guilt and shame that comes with running from it. Can you, from your experience, knowledge, can you speak to maybe what are some of the common results of kids who grow up not having any sort of sexual education from their parents?
Yeah.
I could speak to it a little bit from my experience, but I'm curious if there are just common results and things that happen with people as they grow up when they were never educated at home about sex.
Yeah. I'm going to throw out a few things, so feel free to edit them out if they're not audience appropriate. Okay.
They'll be appropriate.
Okay. So when I was a kid, if I heard on the bus, I rode the bus to school for several years in high school. If I heard something about, I hear some older kids, some seniors on the bus, and one of them says something about 69. Somebody says something about a sexual position. I had nowhere to go look for that. And so I had to ask somebody. I had to ask one of my friends who maybe they had asked somebody. Maybe they had asked somebody. But I got my information from a locker room, or I got it from my dad, which I'm not going to go there. Or like from like a respected adult, right? And I had a couple of football coaches that actually did a pretty good job. They were pretty crass, but they gave me probably the greatest like lessons about relationships, and I'd take care of girls and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But kids are incredibly absorbent of their parents. They have to be. It's wired into them, because without stable adults in their life, their nervous systems knows kids don't survive. So they're very perceptible. They're insanely perceptible to eyebrow raises and pursed lips. And so when a kid asks a question like that, or they hear something, or there's a joke said on TV and they look over and see dad, I quickly change the channel. What they encode into their bodies is, we don't talk about that here, and there's something inherently wrong with it.
Yeah.
Here's where that gets a little bit weirder, or a little bit harder to stomach. When your 4-year-old daughter comes running out of the bathroom after she just took a shower and comes running in there, if you as a dad do anything other than welcome your daughter, she learns at the age of 4 there are parts of her that dad can't look at, yells about, is ashamed about, that she needs to not cover up because of modesty or things like that, but cover up because they're somehow bad.
Yeah.
When little boys grow up and they get messages of silence, they learn their body parts. There's something wrong with them. And so I think kids grow up thinking that their body parts either have some outsized power, or there's something disgusting about them when there's nothing said. Or when things are passed over, or things like, oh, that's gross, or oh my gosh, or they learn that something about me is somehow gross or wrong. And I think that's failure number 1. Failure number 2 is when you only talk about sex and intimacy outside of context, but as a specific act that as a kid you are to never watch, see, or do. If you're a kid, all you want to know is why. And I'm going to try to find every avenue to learn about this thing that is it gets an air of mystery. Whereas, and again, I don't do it perfectly. We don't do it perfectly. But in our house, my wife and I have just made it, we talk about body parts because you have them and I have them. And when sex comes up age appropriately, I want my kids to know it's amazing. And like any other amazing thing, it's most amazing in a context. And then I get to shape and inform and teach about that context. And so I think we have imagined that if we tell kids that things are great or awesome or good, but only in these bounded contexts, that somehow they're going to try to escape it. That's not true. Kids want to find and dig into things that they are curious about and don't understand. And when we are silent, or when we shut them down, or we try to wallpaper over some things, then they're going to be more curious about it.
Yeah.
So I think what I see is adults trying to teach their kids, and we've got adults who are still not comfortable being seen by their spouse with the lights on, because they don't think they're beautiful. They think there's something gross about them. There's something wrong. I can't tell you the number of young married couples who went from no conversations, no premarital counseling, no information from mom and dad, especially at the faith-based universities I was working at, to a honeymoon. Well, dude, they had a very difficult reentry, right? Because it wasn't how it was painted. And so, because they didn't have a language to talk about it, it was just an on-off switch, man. So all I have to say is I see people, I just see the whole an entire grading of adults washed in shame. They don't know. And now they've got this thing going back to the bus. Now my son hears something. Well, he doesn't because I'm a Luddite, but all of his friends hear something on a bus. Now they just Google it. They go around us. And then you Google, what is 69? You Google, what is some sex position? And that internet will tell you everything, right?
Yeah.
And now they're off a rabbit hole that they have. Now they're going down a ski slope and they've got no brakes, man.
Yeah.
So I guess to wrap all the way around this question, this isn't a matter of should we or shouldn't we. We are living in a world with a generation of young adults that were failed by their parents, that have been raised on pornography, that have been raised on, that's it. They've been raised on pornography. And I think we are living out the damage in real time of what that's meant to our culture.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I think from my personal perspective, that's why it's so important for me to start having these conversations intentionally. So, to your point of talking about sexual things in the house, they get brought up in an age-appropriate way with the kids. My son is 8, and this is why I'm kind of proactively preparing myself to have this initial, hey, buddy, here's a little bit more to the conversation to kind of crack the door open for him in a little bit. I want to do that because it never happened for me, and I don't really blame my father too much. He grew up without a dad, so he probably never got it himself. So I don't, throw stones his way. But because of that, my education, like you talked about, came from peers at school. Mm-hmm. And then that came with culture. And then that came with pornography. And then the perception I had of sexuality was so twisted that like there were all sorts of problems I had to
so
work
divorced
to
from reality. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And
it's like trying to learn. It's like going to driver's ed by watching a bunch of Formula One races. Yeah. Like that's not a thing, right? Those are professional drivers on a closed course. I'm not getting I'm not going to get my mom's Camry and know how to drive, right?
Exactly.
And so it's chaos.
Yeah. And the other thing that I didn't think was great was for Christian men, church by and large has avoided the topic.
And utter abject failure.
I agree.
There should be no more sex positive place on planet Earth than a local church.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Everyone in that church got there because some people had sex. I mean, it just is, right? And so, like, it's a strangest, but it's just we nobody knows how to talk about it, and there's too many fights about how and when, and so nobody says anything, and then we leave those kids on their own, man.
Yeah, I mean, God invented them on a church, so
we put them on a church van, and they don't sleep for 2 weeks on camp, and then we're like, make good choices, y'all. I mean, good God, y'all.
Right?
Yeah. I bet. Don't sit. And I'm a lifelong church member. I do a lot of work with churches, and so I'm speaking from the inside out. It's been an abject, abysmal failure.
Yeah. Well, I'll open up about this little personal story because it might resonate with someone listening, and that is growing up in church and always hearing that you just don't have sex. Like, this is the only message. It's just abstinence, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Sex is bad, but when you get married, all of a sudden it's a good thing. It's just like a magical flip of the switch, and it's good. I remember being so scared that I would go to hell and get a girl pregnant and ruin my reputation in life, because that's the message that was communicated to me, that when I got married and when I actually had sex for the first time, I've told my wife about this after 10 years of marriage. I didn't tell her immediately, but my first initial thought when sex was over was, what was so bad about that?
Yes.
Not like sex was amazing. It's just like, why did people tell me that this was so bad? And then, I had a whole lot to unravel at that point, but that's how I felt. And I don't want my kids to grow up and when they actually get married and get to have sex, that this is
That's their first
This is
thought.
their
Yeah.
imagery of it. Yeah. I was
That's
just
right.
like, yeah.
Or the
I
other
was
thing it
ashamed
does-
to tell my wife.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, you waited. The other thing underneath that message, when it's don't,
Yeah.
is it's gotten much, much less over the last 15 years. But when I was growing up, there was no conversation for the kid that did, other than you're disgusting. Like they had the pull the petals off the flower. Like you are ruined
Right.
as a being. Your essence is ruined. And God Almighty, dude, how are you supposed to go into a marriage like that, go into a job like that, go into any sort of service like that with the innate knowing, oh, I'm ruined because of something I did when I was 16 years old. We don't let 16-year-olds buy beer, guns, lottery tickets because they're 16. Yet we tell them, oh, you made a decision. You're disgusting and you're ruined. What a tragic message for a child to internalize.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. So I think we've at least laid a good foundation for fathers listening. You need to have this conversation with your kids. You need to talk to your kids about sex. It needs to be normalized in your home. Now, I want to address what I think is so often the basic version of how this talk goes, and you kind of alluded to yours a little bit. But typically, with all the buddies of mine that I've talked to about this, their conversations basically went the same way. It was about a 30-second conversation, and it was basically, son, that thing in your pants goes in that thing that she's got, and then the baby comes out. And that's the talk. That's the talk that people get. Now, I don't believe that the talk is only the answer to the question your kids have been asking you since they were 3, where do babies come from? So I want to ask you, what is the goal of the talk that we have with our kids? And what are some of the, now, let me say this. When I talk about the talk, I'm talking about this initial conversation that we have, because I understand that this is not a one and done scenario. This is going to be a continued conversation. But when we break out of the box and we have this initial conversation, this sit down with our kid, what's the goal of that? And what are some of the things that we're actually putting on the table to present to them?
So I think, number one, I think you nailed it. There should never be the talk. And if your kids in our modern world can point back to a single interaction y'all had, a single communication you had, I don't want to be blunt, but I'll be blunt. You've let your kid down.
Yeah, be blunt.
I think it starts very, very, very young with like letting them know that, like, talking about their body parts. Don't be like, dude, let me see your muscles. Cover up your thingy, right? Like, it's got a name. It's a body part. You got one too.
Right.
They're in the house, right? There's a bunch of them.
Exactly.
And if you've got multiple sons or whatever. And so I think what I want a kid to focus, I never want them to think something's wrong with them. I don't ever want to think any part of them is somehow inherently gross or dirty. And same with my daughter. And that means I've got to control my eyebrows. I have to control my eye crinkles, and I have to be intentional about talking about body parts the same as I talk about fingers and genitals. I have to the same as I talk about fingers and toes and eyebrows, because they are that.
Yeah,
I think where talks come in. And by the way, in my house, we have a rule, and it's been that way since my son was very, very, very little. And that is, there's no conversation that's not off the table. But that means we have to create a context in our house all the time that we're always having conversations about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's another challenge, is parents don't talk to their kids. And so then they expect to have this big, giant, earth-shattering, important conversation, but it's so decoupled from any other interaction y'all have together. And so in 5th grade, again, I'm not perfect. I'm just trying to learn from all the science and the data and all these conversations I've had. I started taking my son out to Waffle House every Tuesday. I would drop him off at school and we'd go to Waffle House. I'm kind of a nerd about what I eat. That was the only breakfast place in our little rural community outside of Nashville. So that's where we went. And it was literally a year of boring. And then one day, out of the blue, my son says, "Hey, Dad, what about," and now we're in it. But we created a context where there is no question I won't ask. I don't raise my eyebrows when he asks questions. So he doesn't even have in his body, there's a thing he's not supposed to ask his dad because his mom and I have worked. And then my wife and I have a rule, like whoever gets asked the question, just answer the question. Not like, Dad, how come? And this isn't something my son has asked, but like if you're a 6-year-old and 6-year-olds come out and they have a full 6-year-old erection and they're like, Dad, look. If they are instantly met with, oh my God, put that away. What are you doing? Other than, that is amazing. Go put on your underwear, son. We got to go. Right? Or that's how that body part works. When you're a daddy, it's way right. If you don't meet it with that, then a kid instantly puts a GPS pin. Their body goes, oh, that's bad. Or that I can get mom and dad riled up with that particular thing. And so in our house, it just becomes like the mechanics of it all. And then I want my kids to know sex is awesome. And where I think the quote unquote, the talks come in, those become personal. Here's where me and your mom and our particular belief narrative, me and my wife are Christian. So here is where we think sex was made for. Here's where it's awesome. Here's where it will be the most awesome of its awesomeness here. And by the way, if you lie to your children, you undermine everything. What does that mean? If you tell your 16-year-old sex is the worst, it's no good, you're lying to them. Yeah. You're not telling them the truth. If you tell them when your son has a girlfriend or your daughter's got this 18-year-old boyfriend who's pressuring her, and you say, "No, I totally get it. I absolutely totally get it. Like the curiosity, it feels good. So I get it. Sex is awesome." What I will tell you is you think it's awesome now. In this context, it will be an infinitely deeper well. And it's hard for me to even explain that to you at 16. But this is why we don't let you have beers. This is why we don't let you, watch these certain movies because you don't have the wisdom in the context. And by the way, I think it's important for parents to know it's okay to play defense. That's your job, right? That's your job. Yeah. 14-year-olds and 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds can't run your home, right? And so it's okay to say no. It's okay to say you can't date that person. It's okay to say you can't go out with those people anymore. I don't feel comfortable with that situation. It's okay if you give your kids a phone to go through their text on a nightly basis. If God help you, if you give your kids unfettered access to the internet on their phone, you need to know where they're going, man. As my friend Sean says, you don't give your kid access to the internet. You give the internet access to your kid when you do that. Sure. And so they're coming for you. They're coming for your child. And you need to know all that. So I think it's telling them the truth all the time. And kids are amazing at smelling dishonesty. And it just makes them curious. It makes them curious. And here's one last thing. The final thing is, I want my kids to know there is not a thing you can do to where I'm not still going to be your dad. And there's not a thing you can do that I'm still not going to love you. Period. End of story. I might be me sitting next to you in court, right? Right. Like, and I had a friend of mine who's took her teenage son to Walmart and made him like go shop for diapers and stuff. He was fighting her with a girlfriend. So she's like, cool, here, I'm going to show you what this means for your life. And in that particular house, they're open about it. They have lots of conversations, and that particular exercise curbed that behavior. So it was like, oh man, kids are real expensive, right? And so I think it's just being out there. Sex is awesome. It's designed for a context. There's a significant amount of emotional responsibility and psychological responsibility and just financial and otherwise responsibility on the back end. Yep. And I'm not going to lie to you about it.
Hey, if you're a new dad or choosing to embark on a fresh start as a father, I have a gift for you. I wrote a book a while back called Cut the Crap, Direct Tips for Becoming a Dad. I don't teach you how to change a diaper. That one's totally on you. But I do talk about 5 elements that you need to focus on as a dad if you want to be the dad your children need you to be. And this is completely free. It is yours. There's no strings attached. The only thing that I'd like you to consider is if the book brings value to you as a father, make a contribution by going to fatheringourfuture.com/support. But you don't have to. Again, it is a free gift from me to you. The link is in the description after the end of the episode. Click it, get your copy, and I pray that it helps you. Everyone has an opinion on fatherhood, but there's only one place that we should actually look, and that's to God, our Father. That's why I wrote Following Our Father, a devotional for dads. In this, I cover 30 qualities and attributes of our Father in heaven that help us better understand our identity as dads. Each devotional is followed up with a daily step so that we can take the principles of our Father and immediately apply them to our own lives. This is a tool and a resource in your hands that will bless you. Click the link in the description and get yourself a copy of Following Our Father today. Now, in my particular case, because my son is 8, and I believe I've heard you and several other people say that 8 years old is a good age to start having this conversation just because of the world in which we find ourselves today. What are some specifics that I'm going to throw in? Am I going to throw in the details of sex? Am I going to just talk about his body and the changes that are going to happen? What am I throwing in specifically for him? I understand 8-year-olds are not all the same, but
Yeah. So I think I like to let 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 6-year-olds, I like to let them guide a lot.
Okay.
So if I have so let's say you have never done anything, had any conversations, anything with your 8-year-old. You come home from work, y'all play baseball, you go to practice, and you come home and repeat. I'd recommend, like, you and your wife are like, we need to bring this up, right? He's in 4th grade. I know he's getting messages. Kids in his class have smartphones. They're going to show him stuff on their phone. Like, that's the world he's in. I would immediately start with hey, we get up and we have breakfast together. We drive. God help me. I can't believe I'm saying this publicly. Drive to McDonald's. I don't care. Do a thing together on a regular basis, and start with a few other questions. And so what we want to do is not make the only time we have a deep conversation, because the kids are going to feel interrogated because they feel you're upping the ante in the weight of the conversation, and the kids can't carry that weight. Maybe think of it like this. If the first time your kid comes into a gym and you just drop them under a squat rack and they feel you put 245 plates on each side, they're going to collapse under that weight. If your kid is used to coming in the gym with you all the time, then and you look down and go, what's your favorite thing about me and mom? Like, when you hear the word being married, what does that mean? And by the way, if you just eyeball a kid, they're going to melt them. You need to be doing this playing Candyland, or doing this going for a hike, or doing this with some sort of play that allows them to diffuse your laser beam energy. But start doing that over and over. I got the questions for humans cards. We take them with my kid, and we would do 4 or 5 of them, just question cards. And then we got to all right, have you heard the word sex? What is that? What do you know about sex? And they'll look at you. And in my house, for my son and my daughter, they didn't know to be shocked by it. And actually, at the age of 8, both kids had radically different experiences. Some kids had talked about it. One of my other kids had not. So, but I like to let them know. I had one colleague talking to his teenager about masturbation, and realized really quickly, my child doesn't know what I'm talking about. Has no clue what I'm talking about. So I don't want to be the one that introduces this, right? Sure. So I'm going to let my kid be the guide on some of these things. And you as a parent are attuned. You know when your kid knows something and they clam up because they know they're not allowed to talk about it. And humor goes a long way. And but what we don't want to do, we want to get the information out there. But I'm going for a long game here with an 8-year-old. Yeah. I want the seeds I'm planting are not the ins and outs of how sex work. And the seeds I'm planting are not our house rules for sex, and like whatever. The seeds I'm planting are, dude, I'm your dad and I love you. And there's never a thing in the world that you can't ask me about that I'm not going to answer, at least the best I know. Yeah. And those are the seeds I'm sowing at that point.
Okay. No, I think that's great. We've done that a little bit in the house. Kids going to school, coming home, and my son's like, hey, some of my friends said a word that they said was a bad word today. I'm like, what was it? And he just yells it out. And he was like, yeah, it's the F word. And I was like, yeah, what was it? And he just said it. I'm like, yep, that's the one. And then we just talked about it. We didn't freak out because I knew that would be bad. But okay, that's good.
So here's how I would answer that. So your kid comes up, Dad, I heard a word at school, a bad word. What is it? Like, and I would ask with oh, what is it?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to one up them. I'm not trying to, what is it? Like, and they look around and go, you can say it in front of me. Say it. I want to know what the word is. And I'm just saying it with a smile on my face. And your kid blurts out the F word. And you go, oh, that's the big one. That's the big one. And because here's what I want to do. They already feel so terrified to ask you. And so I'm going to hit the other side of that terror teeter-totter with joy and laughter. And then when it settles back, I'm going to say, that's a real big, big, bad word. That's a word that, it's inappropriate. We don't say that word in this house. You're not going to hear me saying that word. Your mom doesn't say, like, that's a word that it's just not inappropriate. What does it mean? It's a yucky word for talking about sex. And really these days, like, what is sex? And now you're off to it, right? But I'm going to answer that with a smile on my face. And again, I don't want them to ever think there's a thing you can ask me that I'm going to go, oh. And I will ask, where did you hear that? Right? What friend said that? And if my 8-year-old says, I don't want to tell you, okay, that's fine. Right? I'm not going to beat you up over that. I'm not going to sweat you. You tell me right now, where'd you learn that? I'm not going to do that to an 8-year-old, right? But I'm going to answer that other side of the teeter-totter with laughter and with, wow, that's a big one. And then when it settles, then we'll talk a little bit more direct.
That's smart. I want to ask you about something that you brought up in talking thus far. This was one of the things that prompted me to reach out to you because my wife said, we know that, John Deloney says that both parents should talk to the kids, regardless if they're sons or daughters, about all of it. It shouldn't just be dads talking to their sons and moms talking to their daughters. And I was like, really? Because, again, no experience over here. I was like, it feels kind of weird a little bit, to go into the details there with daughters. And I've got 3 of those. So I've got 1 son. So I was like, I thought I was going to, have this one and done and be pretty easy, but that's not the case. Right.
Right.
So I want to ask you, because she has mentioned that as a counselor and from the field of psychology, this is why you do that. So can you give more details and more explanation as to why it is beneficial for both parents to just openly talk about sex to sons and daughters?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that attunement. Kids are incredibly attuned to moms and dads, and they are incredibly attuned to is this safe or is that safe or is this not safe? And so when it comes to body parts, we are, comically, probably overly so in my house. And I may look back and be like, I probably hit the pendulum a little too far on that one. But I don't want either of my kids to have any shadows on. That's the word that me and my wife use. I don't want there to be any shadows across their bodies, period. And there is room for what I would call gender specific conversations.
Okay.
Like my son's 14. We are having a little bit more direct conversations about how to treat a girlfriend, how to treat, and my wife talking about the importance of beliefs she is sharing with her daughter about her body and about the power her body actually does have in the world. And the boys, that will be they will have a very feminine, very woman driven conversation over there. And I want my daughter to know that I'm not dumb, but outside of the sex conversation, I want my kids to see me hugging my wife all the time.
Yeah.
And I want them to see us kissing all the time. And I want us to see us dancing in the living room because I don't want sex to be limited to penetration intercourse. I want intimacy and friendship and connection to have a context to it because I want my kids to look at my wife and I and say, I want that in totality. I want all of that. I don't just want a person to sleep with. And so that's a big part of it, but it's not everything. It's all of this stuff. And so then when my daughter's 13, 12, 15, 17, and my wife talks about sex and boys in a context, my daughter will have a picture of, oh yeah, I want that. I want whatever y'all have. I want that. And she has a picture, a roadmap for the conversation my wife's having. I think often we try to describe an NBA Finals basketball game, and our kids have never seen even a YMCA game played. And so they don't understand this picture we're painting for them because they're 13, we're 40, right? But yeah, again, it comes back to shadows, and that goes back to my wife and I just have a rule: like kids drive a lot of the questions,
Okay.
and uh, there will come moments when as my daughter gets older, when we talk about modesty and that's too short, and that makes me uncomfortable. Or I'm a boy; boys are going to want to try to get a glimpse, and that's like I'll be very honest about that stuff because if she doesn't hear it from me, she will experience it from a 16-year-old little boy. And
Yeah.
she will have heard it from me first if I'm doing my job right.
I think that's good. Now, I want to throw this at you. And you've already kind of talked about this as well. If both parents are in on these conversations with sex, in most households, what are the chances that husbands and wives think about sex the same way? Or is this going to be kind of the fun game, like what you talked about earlier? Like you'll make a joke and then your wife's like, okay, now you're going to explain this in detail. Like, is this just like you have fun trying to balance this out? Do you try to be proactive and have more conversations there first before you actually have them with your kids? What's a
I
good way
think that's why
forward?
I think that's why it's so, if you do this part right, it's because you and your spouse have gotten aligned on what y'all believe and what you want your kids to know. And that means y'all will have to have discussed your childhood traumas and the things you did or didn't get and the uncomfortable things and the ways it was or wasn't done when you were a kid. And I think a lot of couples have 2 or 3 kids and they don't know about each other's sexual histories, or they don't know that one of them was abused. And look, I mean, you look at the data that's not terribly uncommon, heartbreakingly so.
Right.
And so I think to be on the same page, same with your money, to be on the same page, same with your faith walk. And I'll even go this far. My wife and I are both Christian. I think our beliefs are different on quite a few things underneath that umbrella.
Sure.
And so our values, my wife and I's values are anchored into concrete. But our beliefs change all the time. That's why I love talking with her, because we challenge each other. And she listens to a podcast and I read 4 books and I go talk to a scientist and she talks to 3 scientists and she's like, what you believe is dumb. You're wrong. And we laugh and we go back and forth. So I think at the end of the day, I want my son to know, I told the story from a group in front of a group, so I don't mind telling it here. This is about, again, you can edit all this out. My wife busted into the house last year. Son was in 8th grade. And she busted into the front door with that look that I could tell she was mad, but whatever happened was hilarious because she had that. It's just a very unique look that our wives get.
Yep.
And she pointed and goes, "That's your son." And she kept walking. And so he comes in. He is literally the greatest human I've met, and just an extraordinary young boy, growing into an amazing man. But he never, ever has said a swear word. That's like his claim to fame. And I was like, well, your dad may. Right? Like, he's like, Dad, I don't ever talk that way. And so, and I said, what did you do? And he looks at me and his first words out of his mouth were, Dad, I did not say that's what she said. And I go, oh gosh, what did you say? And he goes, Dad, I didn't. His eyes were super big. He wasn't being funny. He was trying to defend himself. He's like, Dad, I did not say that's what she said. And I go, what happened? And I could see my wife, her shoulders were kind of shaking. Right. She was laughing over in the corner where he couldn't see her. And he goes, Dad, we went and got like some kind of sandwich shop here in town. And like 5 times, Mom said, this is so big, I'll never fit this all the way in my mouth. Okay, so he's an 8th grader. He's 14 or 13 years old.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I was like, oh gosh. And he goes, I didn't say that's what she said. I go, what did you say? And he goes, all I said, Dad, all I said was, that's not the first time I've heard that today. Well, I started dying laughing. I start dying laughing. My wife starts laughing. And he's not laughing because he thinks he's in so much trouble. And that was a great moment for me as his dad. Again, I'm never going to lie to my kid. Yeah. That was a funny thing that happened. That was a funny thing my wife said. That was a funny thing that happened. And that was a good thing for me to tell him, hey, when you and I are out hunting, I think that's a funny joke. There's a time and a place that's not a great joke for you and your mom. And so then he got it and he was like, ooh, they think this is kind of funny. So my wife, he did it again later on, like a couple days later and a couple weeks later, because he's a kid. And so my wife, her answer was, whenever he would say, that's what she said, or made a joke, my wife would explain in crystal clear anatomical detail why that's something a she could have said. And very quickly, it put an end to it because my wife she was amazing at like, oh, this is what that would actually refer to. And nothing melts a 14-year-old boy like his mom talking to him directly about oral sex in a very clinical way, right? So
I could imagine.
but then then my wife would start laughing. So we got to talk about time and place. We got to talk about context. We got to talk about unwholesome talk coming out of your mouth. We got to talk about all these things. And by the way, that's a funny thing. And I would be lying to him if I yelled at him and said, "How dare you?" And then I went in my bedroom and laughed. That's a funny thing. And I don't want my kid, my 14-year-old, to think he's crazy. And as my wife not so generously pointed out, he got that from you, John. You're the one always saying. So it was a good reflection of me and my behavior. Like, oh man, I'm not setting a great example in my own house when I laugh at things, right? Yeah. So all of that was okay. But here's what the meta he walked away with is, there's nothing in my house we can't talk about. And Dad did say, don't do that in front of your mom. That's not an appropriate place. There is time and place for these things. And that's not because she's a woman and not because it's gender. It's because my wife in particular said, I don't want to hear that funny joke from my 14-year-old. Right.
Sure.
And so all of that wrapped up into, we're going to have humor. But the goal here is he can ask anything. I'm going to be honest with him. We're going to give him direct information. And then when it comes to the bigger existential stuff about how awesome sex is and where it's best, where it can best reside and where it's safest and where, man, you think when you're 16, that feels good. When you're 25 years married and y'all don't care about anything anymore. And like, it's another level of intimate and connected. And so I can do all of that because we have a foundation of honesty and humor and safety.
Yeah, that's good. Let me ask you specifically, if you can do this, about the conversations that you have had with your kids. Are there things that along the way, maybe you learned like, oh, it probably wasn't so good, and you revised it? Were there successes or failures? Can you share maybe one success, one failure?
Yeah. I learned there's a sweet spot between too much laughter, too much making jokes, and just answering a question. And so I learned that my default, I don't go, like I've been doing crisis stuff and doing death notifications for 20, like nothing shocks me anymore. And so nothing raises my eyebrows initially, but I make a joke about it. Well, my kids learned that when Dad makes a joke, that's something he didn't really want to talk about. And so that was, again, I think every parent has their tell. And I also can imagine the vast majority of the parents listening to this, don't have two PhD trained parents in the house who've been dealing with elementary school kids up to college age kids for 2 decades, right? So the thought of talking about oral sex with your 14-year-old just sends your heart rate to 160 beats a minute, right? Or it makes you beat red. What your kid needs to hear you say is, my dad and mom never talked to me about this, and this, like, I'm so nervous to tell you about it. Say that. Call it out. Because your kid's going to feel the nervous, but they're going to blame themselves for the nervous. They're going to feel your anxiousness. They're going to blame themselves and try to protect you from those feelings. That's not their job. That's the parent's job. So a success has been just the other night, my daughter said, "What is sex again?" And I explained it real quick. We were in the middle of a whole other conversation, and I ended it with, "It's awesome. And your mom and I believe it's for married people." And she goes, "Oh!" And by the way, our kids don't have our same baggage. She was on to the next thing as though she was like, "What's a Whirlpool again?" And like, "It's the brand of refrigerator." And she's like, "Oh, can I have some?" Like, she was on to the next thing because I didn't make it a big thing. Right.
Right.
And so that was a good one. The failures have been probably early on, especially with my son, when he would come ask me a particular anatomical question. And I'd be like, "Ooh," and I would try to overly bro out with him. He's 9 or he's 11. Yeah. He doesn't want to be my bro. He's just asking me similar, like, "Hey, Dad, why do my fingers make a popping noise if I push them back, right? Why do you crack your knuckles? Hey, Dad, why does my body do X, Y, and Z?" That's what he's asking, right? And any drama in that conversation is drama I bring to it. He doesn't have that drama yet until I tell him, oh, this is dramatic.
That's good. Yeah.
But I think ultimately, let's take it off sex, because sex is kind of a third rail. Let's talk about, like right now, Los Angeles is on fire, right? There's a lot of fire going on. It's scary. It's horrific. And if you have the news on in your house, it's just, they're bombarding it 24/7, 365. I've got a lot of friends out in that area, a lot of work colleagues out in that area. And I also grew up in Houston, where there was a number of massive, massive hurricanes. They just would pause the whole city, just wipe out parts of the city. And so anytime there's a natural disaster, my nervous system sets down. I become a 6-year-old again in Hurricane Alicia that shut off power for 10 days to our home growing up. We cooked on a camp stove. Like, I have that's in my body, right? Well, when I see these fires and my son or my daughter asks about these fires, they see it on me. They feel it on me. Daddy is pouring out empathy. Dad, I could feel that he's not okay. If I go, yeah, man, they got good firefighters and they're working on it. Yeah, they're going to get this thing solved. They know in their guts I'm not telling them the truth. If I say, yeah, this makes me sad for all those families. Like the thought of our house burning down and me having to look at you and Josephine, your sister, and your mom out in the driveway, and we don't have a home anymore. The thought of that scares me to death. It's just scary. This makes me scared. Saying that out loud doesn't scare your kid. It makes them feel not crazy.
Yeah.
Because they feel your fear. They know it's there. They know you're anxious. They know you're worried about money. And so calling it out and putting it on the table lets them not feel crazy. And then you saying, but that's why we've got this home insured for now, right? Until the insurance companies go under. And that's why I do this and this and this. And so I'm going to let my kids know I got a plan. And if that was, then we would go stay with grandmother and granddad until we figured out. Like, I want them to know I've thought through plan B and plan C. And so they're like, oh, okay, dad's driving. The biggest terror for a kid is when they feel like, oh, I have to drive. Because dad's so worried, dad's so scared, dad's so nervous, dad's so afraid, dad's so uncomfortable with this conversation. Whether it's grief, whether it's uncle so-and-so passed away, whether it's we need to talk about sex. I need my kids to know I'm driving. And it's okay to say, dude, I'm really uncomfortable with this conversation. This one's going to be weird. And even a perfect example. Here's one I did right. My son's in high school and he's got friends at Google, his dad now. And so I want to be careful how I tell this. Something came up in our house and my wife was like, hey, why is X, Y, and Z? And I was like, yeah, I'll have that conversation. That one's mine to have. I'll have that one. So my son and I hike all the time. We hunt together, we fish together, and we go hiking a lot. And so when we go hiking, it's just become this funny, like, Dad, what do you want to talk about? And I'll ask him like a philosophy question from grad school, or ask him like whatever, because his dad's a nerd.
Yeah.
Or ask him what he thinks about the upcoming deer season or whatever. And I said, well, son, this one's going to be weird. This one's going to be awkward. And he looked at me and he goes, even for you? And I go, yep, even for me. And he, having taken my lead over 14 years, he laughed. And he goes, oh, this ought to be good. And that was how we had this particular awkward conversation that ended up not being awkward. It was awkward, but it was direct and it was funny and it was back and forth. And I got to tell him some things that I believed on particular issues, but that's how he took my lead from so many other conversations. But I put up front, this one's going to be weird. I'm going to struggle to make eye contact with this one. Right. Like, but he knew enough. He felt it. He's been trained enough by watching me to go, oh man, I can't wait. Right. And so my awkwardness wasn't something for him to shy away from because I'd given him permission to lean into dad's feelings. That's all right. He doesn't have to be scared of those things.
Yeah, that's wise. There are a few things that I've taken out of our conversation so far. One thing that I think is big is you never want to make your kid feel like they're broken. You don't want to throw shame on them. So no matter how you go about it, just stray away from that. What you want to do is you always want to tell the truth, no matter what, even if it is like, this is going to be weird, or I really don't know. Here's my take. Here's my opinion. Poke holes in it. Just be honest with your kids, and then make sure at the end of the day that they know that they're loved regardless of mistakes, everything.
Yeah.
I want to ask if there is any parting advice specifically on this conversation of sex and sexuality that maybe we haven't covered, but just one little tidbit that you'd like to toss in?
I would ask every parent to stamp this on their hearts. Facts are your friends. Facts are your friends.
Yeah.
And kids learn the emotional weight of particular topics and words from the dysregulated adults in their lives. A kid doesn't know what a Democrat is or a Republican is until dad says, this is who we are and these folks are evil. That's when they learn, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, kid just knows, oh, that guy's got gray hair and this guy's got brown hair. Why is that? Right? And so one of my oldest friend on planet Earth was in a tragic car wreck 20 years ago and is paraplegic. I made sure my son was around him very, very, very early on. And my buddy is a riot. He's hilarious. And so it was perfectly normal for a 6-year-old to be like, why is that guy in a chair has wheels on it? Why can't he just get up?
Yeah.
And my buddy, I wish he hadn't explained it how he did, but it was pretty funny. But it's right for them to ask those kind of questions, right? And so facts are your friends. He's in a car wreck, and so now his legs don't work anymore, and it's a bummer. And he sees me still visiting my buddy and still making jokes, and so I think facts are your friends. The other thing is we're playing when it comes to sex and intimacy and those conversations. We're playing a very, very long game. I'm aiming for a sexually healthy 30-year-old son. I'm heading towards I want my daughter to be sexually healthy at 21 and 25 and 30 and 40 and 50. And so I'm planting seeds now. I'm not forging things out of iron. And it allows me to hold things a little more loosely. That allows me to come back the next day and be like, dude, I answered this question yesterday. I totally blew it. I answered that all wrong. Or I made a joke about something you asked me yesterday and that was stupid. I shouldn't have done that. I made a joke and that was me because I was awkward. Your question was a good one. Here's the truth about X, Y, and Z. And the other thing is 8-year-olds don't need to know what 69 is. 8-year-olds don't need to know what oral sex is. My 14-year-old, if he asks, hey, I'm going to tell him what it is, right? Because I know the chances of one of his idiotic classmates going like shoving a phone in his face at a locker is high. That's the world they're in, and so I want him to have heard it from me first. And so I think everything. My friend Rachel Cruz says, "Share, don't scare." Everything's got to be age appropriate, right? And facts are your friends, man. Answer the question. Just answer the question, right?
Yeah, that's good. One last thing. I want you to close in a word of prayer, if you don't mind. But one last thing before then, just because this is a great opportunity for me to ask you this. You've got 2 kids. You've got your unique experiences. You've got your education. You've got your plethora of stories. I'd like to know at this point in your life, in this season that you find yourself in, what's your number one piece of advice for fathers?
Can I the fact that you asked this is really providential and timely. I'm working on a new book, and so I spent the morning reading and I read with a notepad next to me just as ideas come.
Yeah.
And I wrote this down. It's funny that you asked that. When a girl crosses a certain age, she's called a woman. A boy is perpetually being called on the carpet to prove that he's a man. That process never stops. And so you can be a bad woman, you can be a loose woman, you can have all kinds of adjectives, but the debate on whether you're a woman or not is never in question.
Yeah.
The debate on whether that guy's a real man or not is every minute of every hour of every day. It's exhausting. And in that context, I think over the last 50 years especially, in an amazing, beautiful moment of freedom, women have been taught to do things that were traditionally reserved only for men. Speak your mind, be heard. Your voice matters. Your thoughts at this boardroom matter. You're really brilliant. Bring that here. And so they've been taught a new set of skills, if you will. Men, on the other hand, have not been taught and or given permission how to nurture the other side of that equation. And so what I'm seeing all over the country is dads who want to have permission to hug their sons because their dads never hugged them, but it feels weird. They want permission to hug their daughters, but it feels awkward, especially their teenage daughters. And they get the first hint of, oh my gosh, I just felt the back of their bra and I can't hug me. So the number one piece of advice I give dads is, if you're like, stop trying to prove some misshapen picture of what a man is every minute of every day. You're worth being loved, and your kids need you, and your spouse needs you. Hug your kids, front hug your sons, hug them so tight they can't breathe, and do it a lot. Now my son is taller than me. He's literally taller than me, and it's like hugging a grown man. But I told him early on, I'm gonna hug you every day of your life, son. And is it awkward for me? Because my dad, my Texas cop dad, he wasn't a big hugger. That's fine. Is it feel weird? Yeah. Is it right? Yes. Same with my daughter. Lean into the nurture side. We get into protect and provide. I think protect and provide is cool, but I think a lot of times our families need us to provide warmth, and our families need us to provide a hug and a sturdy presence, and our families need us to protect their spirits as much as their physical bodies with our kung fu and our whatever, our bows and arrows, right? They need us to protect the safety in their house, and that can be done with laughter and a hug and a high five. And my daughter and I have started, it's a new world fighting league called Couch Fight, where I'm sitting on the couch and it ends up in this WWE match. We're both exhausted. She takes full fist swings. It's incredible. But I watch her, like, her whole body melts because she got rough play with her dad, right? Yeah. She got connection time. So men need to lean into the nurture side.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a long, windy answer. I'm right. It happens to be right in the front of my mind right now. So thanks for letting me just kind of, I haven't said any of that out loud. I just wrote it in my in my book notebook, but men need to, we got the beefcake side. Fine. I work out a lot. I shoot guns, and I shot my bow and arrow yesterday after work. Yeah. Fine. The thing I need to practice is making sure I hug every member of my family for an extended period of time so that they know their dad's safe. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
It's a home base.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. I think that is a fantastic piece of advice for fathers. This has been great, and it's also been fun. And I am glad.
Sorry if it's the crassest, if it's the most crass interview you've had.
It's not. I actually had one way back when I first started everything, and a buddy of mine listened to it, and he was like, "Dude, you got to edit out all the profanity and anything that contextually fits with the profanity." I was like, "This is going to be a 4-second interview." So,
I've had a few of those. It's all good. Yeah.
So this was great. But
you said this best, and I've never thought of it in this context, but you said it. You have to choose your heart. You are choosing for your kids to relive the sexual trauma, the sexual feelings of inadequacy, the feelings of shame about body parts. You're choosing for your kids to re-experience that all on their own. That's hard. Yeah. Or the other hard you can choose is to awkwardly, wonky, sideways, head right into it and decide. We all have these same body parts. They're not. I'm just going to stop hiding from that inside my own house. I get to be inside my own house, right? Yeah. And we're going to bravely head into that area. Either one of those is going to be hard, especially if you have no roadmap. But head directly into the one that's going to give your kid the best chance to have peace. And the world they are inheriting is chaos. Give them at least peace that when they look in the mirror, they know nothing's wrong with me. What a gift that would be.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And that you saying that made me think of we have the choice as dads to either bear that for our children or to pass it off onto them. And I think if father thought about an alternative like that, you would never throw the burden on your kid. You would always bear it for them. So, yeah, I got that thing, Choose Your Heart, from this book that I read. So again, highly recommend it. Fantastic.
Well, I stole it from my buddy Michael Easter, who wrote The Comfort Crisis, another great book. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Again, this has been fun. This has been great. If you would be so kind, close us out in a word of prayer.
Yeah, you got it, man. God, thanks for the extraordinary and challenging task of being a father, being a dad. And in a world where being a father, being a dad looks different, sounds different, and we're tugged in all sorts of different directions, I ask that you give us guidance and you give us wisdom. And I ask that you direct us towards the hearts and minds of our spouses, of our kids, of our coworkers, of our leaders, of our neighbors, and ask us to be 365 degrees of a community member, of a family member. And that means the tough stuff, but that also means the nurturing. And when we feel awkward, help us to be brave and head into the awkward. Your sons, name it. Amen.
Amen. I've loved this. This is great. If at some point in the future we talk more about fatherhood, that'll be cool too. But I want
anytime, brother.
Cool. I'll holler at you. But for everyone listening, if they want to hear, what is it, the greatest podcast on mental health and everything else, is it the Dr. John Deloney Show?
Oh, that's a story for another time, man. That was a joke that got out from under me, man.
That's awesome. But it is good stuff. I get to listen through my wife. She listens pretty much all the time. And it's good stuff. So I highly recommend the podcast.
Thanks,
but anyway, again, thank you for this. Thank you for everything you've added. And I know this is going to be a tremendous blessing to myself and also to every father and mother who's listening to this episode. So thank you.
You're the man. Appreciate you, brother.
What a great conversation with Dr. John Deloney about having the talk with your children. We talked about the anxieties, the significance of having the talk, and how you can go about it. I took away some great things from this episode and this conversation, some things that I do want to repeat to you. I repeated them once, but you need to hear them again and again and again, so I'm going to repeat them one more time. Before I do that, though, I do want to highly recommend that you get his book, Building a Non-Anxious Life. He did not tell me to promote this at all during the episode or again after the fact. He just came on like a person who doesn't care about numbers, but he just cares about people and helping people. And he joined this podcast to talk about the talk. And I really appreciate that. But I read this book and I went through it. And while I'm not someone who deals with anxiety, there were still times in this book that I thought, this is good information. This is going to help me out. So no matter where you fall on the spectrum of stress and anxiety, I would highly recommend that you get Building a Non-Anxious Life by Dr. John Deloney. I'll put a link in the description so that you can grab your copy of that. But here's some takeaways from the episode that I want to make sure you hear one more time. Let me give you 3. The first one is never ever make your kids feel like they're broken. Don't make them feel like they're the mistake. Don't ever throw shame on your children. The second thing, always tell the truth. Good rule for life, but specifically in the conversation of sexuality and sex and puberty and all the fun stuff that comes with that. Just tell the truth. If something's weird, preface your answer with, this is a little weird for me, but here we go. Or if you don't know, just say, I don't know. Invite them to be a part of the process of you figuring something out. Tell the truth. And the last thing, this should be something that as Christian fathers, we make sure we have on lockdown, but that is making sure that your children know that they are loved, accepted, and that it is unconditional. That no matter what crap they get themselves into in life, they can always know, while they might not feel like they deserve it, they will know that dad still loves me. Make sure your child knows, not just feels, but that they know that they are unconditionally loved by you. This was a great conversation. I hope you'll go back and listen to it again. I know that I certainly will, but I'm looking forward to the conversations that are ahead. There's more to come on this series of Talking the Talk, and I hope you'll subscribe and stick around to hear it. If you ever need any help, I'm here for you, fatheringourfuture@gmail.com. I will help you however I can, but for now, thank you for being with me. This is Fathering Our Future. I'm Anthony Vandegrift, and I hope you will join me next time. Hey, one more time, I want to thank you for listening to Fathering Our Future. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, please do so wherever you listen and consider leaving a nice review because I would appreciate that. But if you're not connected to Fathering Our Future on social media, you can find it on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and there you're going to get some additional content on a more regular basis that you don't always get here on the podcast. Now, the last thing that I would like to ask of you is that you would consider becoming a financial partner of Fathering Our Future, because dads make a difference, and dads are not disposable. Dads are vital, and they are essential, and they are needed. And the impact that dads make doesn't just reside in the home, but it has a ripple effect that goes to churches and communities and culture. And I'm inviting you to be a part of equipping and empowering and educating dads to be the dad that God has called them to be and that their children need them to be. You can become a financial partner with Fathering Our Future. It can be a one-time contribution, a monthly commitment, but by doing that, you play a direct role in impacting dads. You can check the link in the description below. You can pray about it. You can get on board. And I thank you in advance for becoming a part of Fathering Our Future in a special and a dynamic way. God bless you.